Cade Mila Falcha. Welcome to Irish Granny Helen, and Gerald is joining me as my partner in knitting crime.
Yes.
Oh, I forgot to put my hat on. I think it's working. Okay, it looks like there's one eyeball. This is my Christmas present to everybody a few years ago. I knit these little gnome hats. They're hard to see
because those are cute.
Goes way high.
Did you use a variegated yarn for that, or did you actually switch
Oh
up
yeah. This is I think this was a super bulky Lion brand. I like Lion brand yarn. I don't like the other brand that starts with B.
Yes.
It scratches too much.
Yes.
Yeah, this was a super bulky, and this was like a rainbow color. I just loved how it turned out. And you could get it in a variety of shades. So this one is mostly primary. They had some that were shades of rose and purple and pink, and then they had some that were shades of green. And I did a whole bunch, for Christmas, basically.
I love that. When you are looking at your iPad, you have the option for private chat. Do you have the option to click on comments?
I see comments. There's two.
Okay.
Oh, Sherry! Sherry, what are you doing there? Hi. Aren't you supposed to be at work? Oh, I bet she is at work.
She is at work. She's, she's doing that. Hi.
And Jill, hi. Jill promised she'd be here. Hi, Jill. So we're just going to yak about knitting, and we have our knitting with us. And Gerald, why don't you tell us what you're wearing? Who are you wearing?
Who am I wearing?
Yeah.
I just finished this hat last night, and it is
beautiful color.
It is a great color. It is a wool. I know it's a wool. It is a beautiful purpley blue.
Dark periwinkle almost.
It's like a dark periwinkle, yes. And so this is my pattern. I was making it up, and
please, my God,
they're just. I mean, you're just knitting around. So
well, look at the fancy. Did you use a cable?
Yeah, it's a cable.
Oh my God, that's beautiful.
It's no, thank you. So I just finished that, and then I played. I knit a headband. I have friends
do you have wristbands too? So when
no, I don't, because I ran out or I had about 18 inches left of the yarn, and I was getting this from my stash, so I don't remember what it is. I don't know how much I had, but
you were starting something, and that looks like the band we have, but it's very wide.
Well,
you know who you look like with that on? Oh my God, you're going to be insulted. You're going to leave. You look like Ned Flanders.
Hi, Diddly Ho.
Neighborino.
Yeah.
One of my all-time favorite cartoons, Ned Flanders.
Yes. Oh yeah.
Hi, Sleuth Jill. Hi, Jill. Hi, Linda. Hi, everybody. I'm going to very rapidly run out of the ability to say hello to everybody. So just a communal hi. Okay, so we're going to talk about knitting. And before we start, I would like to share some books.
Yes, please.
So this is how I got started. I started knitting in the Girl Scouts when I was in the 4th grade. So what was I, 9 or 10? And they actually worked with us at the meetings to knit a Barbie dress. And can you imagine how fiddly and small? That was crazy, I think. Brutal, right?
Yes.
They didn't teach us how to read a pattern. So I never progressed beyond that until this book came out.
Yep.
And it's just wonderful, and this is still a little bit before, well, for me anyway, before the internet was ubiquitous. And then this is the second book that they have. And it's just a wonderful resource for how to do things. But I really got my knitting skills a little bit better because I got a little dog, and I bought this book.
Oh,
that actually looks like my little dog. Oh, she just died. So sad. She was 18. So I bought this book probably close to 20 years ago. Yeah.
Love
that. And I'll show you. I have so many old worn out dog sweaters that's probably one of the things, Gerald, I was telling you, I'm cleaning house for Christmas. That's probably one of the things I should do is thin out my my pile of worn out dog sweaters. Oh, maybe it's in the other book. Wouldn't you know it? There's one that's really cute. It's all baubles. Oh, here it is. A little hard to see. Oh, here we go. Isn't that the cutest? This is the cutest little dog sweater. And I did something really fun. I made a deal with the dog groomer because I had a Yorkie and they, you know, they really need to be groomed. They're insane. It's like owning a sheep, you know. So I made a deal with the groomer. I would bring in a bunch of knit dog sweaters and she would sell them, and then I'd get a percentage. Yes. And she'd take it off the grooming. So I didn't have to pay for grooming. And the good thing about this is a great way to start, because guess what? It'll fit some dog somewhere. You don't have to worry about fitting, right? So that was, and then finally my last book to share. And this is a book I got because the pictures are so beautiful. I will confess it's hard to follow the patterns. Oh, from the Outlander. Let me show you why it's hard to follow them. Look at how small the writing is. I'm partially blind, I think.
Oh, that's crazy.
It's really hard to follow. And also, I think it's English. And so they have a few different terms.
Oh, uh-huh.
Yeah, so it's a little, I mean, it's probably me and not the book. And look at that beautiful picture. Is she not gorgeous?
She's gorgeous. I like her hair up, and I like that that wrap. That's nice.
She's Irish. The English accent is fake.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So that's my story. What about you? And you are like an expert. I know that.
Well, I don't know if I'm an expert, but I did for a long time. I had a knitting blog back 20 years or so ago, when blogs were getting very popular. And so I created a blog, and I also created a YouTube channel because I'm a person who it's easier for me to talk about what I'm doing and show people than type it. So I would just do videos.
Well, it's easier to follow a video and watch somebody. There are some great videos out there. This is how you do, what was the one? Oh, make one to the right, make one to the left. I had to do that. I tend to forget. I don't have good spatial relationship sense. So I tend to forget what the hell is it I'm supposed to be doing. And I just go look at one of those quick, 5-minute tutorials.
Let me tell you, the tutorials and the resources that are out are truly incredible. Yeah. Truly incredible.
Yeah.
Linda Bishop said, back in the 1970s, I knitted some, but I am Aries and not patient enough sewing, so I could finish a project in several hours. Even made slips, a bikini, and panties.
Sewing or knitting? Knit underpants?
Well, yeah. And then Sleuth Jill said she's a bit of a trader today. I have put my knitting to the side while I pin together the pieces of fabric I have cut to make a calf length lined tape.
Oh, I'd love to see that. I wonder, is it like tweed and something beautiful on the inside? That just sounds beautiful. Yes, did you have a particular knitting book to hand that you would like to recommend? Or
there was, and I don't have it with me. I am ill prepared. My apologies. But it was.
You didn't do your homework.
I didn't. I've been knitting.
Okay. So I'm going to give you your penance. 2 knit socks and 3 Our Fathers.
Okay. Ooh. Okay. But the Sally Melville had a series of books. One was called The Knit Stitch. One was called The Pearl Stitch, and one was color working, and everything in it it was just all knit. You didn't have to do any purling at all. and it was really, truly incredible the amount of designs she came up with. And so if you could find that book used at a bookstore, I would grab it. It's really high quality.
What's the
Good.
name of it? The knit stitch.
The Knit Stitch. It's by Sally Melville.
So does it contain patterns, or she just?
Yes, it's beautiful patterns, and it's a great resource to start knitting. And so I also looked at Elizabeth Zimmerman, who was a big person for knitting in the round, and she was a huge. I actually have VS tapes of her shows and knitting, and then I also bought them on DVD. So,
I it's funny. I was intimidated by the notion of learning how to knit in the round, but I've gotten to the point now where I don't like to use straight needles.
Yes,
I prefer knitting.
Yeah. Well, and part of it is if you were using straight needles, because like this, all of the weight is down here on the cable between the needles. Here's the needles. So the weight is here, but when you're using straight needles, the weight is on the needle. So you actually have to move all of the weight. So
I hadn't even thought about that. That's true. Shall we brag now? Can I show you what I made for my granddaughter?
Yes, please.
Okay, so don't laugh, because I am not so talented a knitter that anything that I make looks polished. It definitely looks like somebody made it. But she's only 8, so what does she know? Her birthday, she'd be 9. Her birthday is the end of December. So this is a poncho I made her.
Look at that. That's beautiful.
This was a nightmare. It's not that it's necessarily that difficult. I am a poor workman. Let's put it that way. I'm not the most, wouldn't want me to do your brain surgery.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Good to keep that in mind.
But this was very forgiving. So to go along with it, I made her fingerless gloves.
Love it.
Which actually fit me. So I'm going to put them on to show you. Take off my ring. Because it was just one size. And, she can scooch them. So just like that.
That's great.
And then, of course, the hat that goes with it.
Oh.
So do you think she'll love her grandmother?
Well, of course she'll love her grandmother. Duh.
Buying her affection.
Well, I think, anybody, someone has to be knit-worthy in order to get something. They have to be knit-worthy or quilt-worthy before I spend all of this time creating something to give them.
Yeah, I have made things that I know people didn't appreciate.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I've made things that probably weren't worthy of being appreciated.
Yeah. Well, that's part of one of the things that I'm working on, gifts for friends. And I'm worried some of them won't appreciate them. And I'm like, okay.
What are you making?
I'm making hats. I'll show you.
I'll show you while you're doing that. I'll show you my gift for everybody in the family, because we're not exchanging gifts. So my Christmas gift, because they're all coming here, I can't not give something. I mean, that feels bad, right? So what I did is I filled this bag with hats of all sizes, and it's just a grab bag. Stick your hand in and pick out a hat and find one you like. So there's this one.
Nice.
And then there's this style of one. And a million of these guys. And I love this heavy, bulky yarn because it knits so quickly.
Yes.
And the style of this pattern. Well, here's a little blue one because I have a grandson and we color code everybody in our family. But anyway, it's just a gigantic bag of hats like that. And
I love that.
Christmas at my house.
I love that. And so I have hats that I've been making, and so yeah, I just went through and
Oh, the colors are beautiful.
so this is a hat, and this is one
Oh, one
that
of the pointy ones, right?
yeah, because it's just basically you cast on a certain number of stitches, you knit until you're done, and then you do a 3-needle bind off. And so it's like that. And so some people like that showing, and if
It
you
doesn't
don't,
have
you
to,
can do
right, right,
that.
right.
And so there's
So
that.
do you just do like a long rectangle and sew the side seams? Or do
No,
you knit it in the round?
I knit it in the round.
Okay.
Knit it in the round. So there's that one. And I knit this one because I was using up yarn that I had.
I love those colors. They're just beautiful. Oh, beautiful.
Knit that one. I knit this one. This is using Noro yarn. I
What
like
is that?
knitting. It's a yarn from Japan,
Oh,
and it's a beautiful color.
is it
With
bamboo?
variegated yarn. What?
Bamboo.
It's this one's not, but they do have a bamboo and silk
Yeah.
yarn, which is
Yeah.
glorious.
Oh, how beautiful.
And so it's one of these things that yeah, what's great with the variegated yarn is you don't have to change yarns. It does it automatically.
Yeah, I know. I
So,
know. That's why I like it. And then you don't have to sew all those little tails in
yeah.
later. Linda, I love tweed too. And I didn't really realize, Jill, that there's different ways to knit until fairly recently. I just learned what I learned. I didn't know it had a name.
Mhm.
My grandmother or my mother was very strict about when you knit and you're using straight needles. I have to show you because I don't have the vocabulary to explain the issue. It would be about this. Why is that on the wrong side? Oh, okay. As you're knitting, and pretend these are long straight needles, you have to wrap the thread around, and you're not allowed to lift your hand off the needle.
Oh, uh-huh.
Yeah, I just do whatever I feel like doing. I'm usually distracted watching, really bad reality TV. So
Well, and and here's the thing. You knit, it looks like English style. You move the yarn with your right hand.
I'm right-handed.
Yeah, I knit continental, which is you move the yarn with the left hand.
Oh, sacre bleu, that's so fancy.
Well, but I'm right-handed, and this is the person who taught me to knit.
Yeah.
That's the way she knit.
So do you have an interesting little knitting fact? I do. You go first.
Ooh, well, back in the day, most knitters were men.
That's exactly right. I was going to say. You're reading my mind. It's hell to have psychic friends. Let me tell you. You can never.
It is, and there's also, you can get knitting belts, and some of the stuff that they used, they actually had belts that were made to be able to put the long needles on, the long metal needles,
right,
so that you could hold them. You didn't have to, they would sit in the belt.
Yeah, like carrying a flag.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that's totally fascinating.
Well,
did I steal your thunder?
No, you gave me a great intro. Most knitters were men, or maybe that's not the correct way to put it. Many men knit in the past. Yes. It was not gendered the way it is now. In Ireland, those Irish fishermen knit sweaters that everybody loves so much? Mm-hmm. They had a purpose. They were knit with a family pattern. So if you saw a certain design of cables or certain whatever the knit design was, you knew what family that was. It was a means of identifying fishermen who drowned because the water was so cold, the Irish didn't learn how to swim. there was, well, I mean, they learned how to swim in a pool, but they didn't learn how to swim in the ocean. They didn't bother because you wouldn't survive anyway. So they would have to identify a lot of bodies. This is such an Irish story, isn't it? They'd have to identify a lot of bodies, and oftentimes that's a little difficult if they've been in the water a while. They would recognize the knit of the sweater. How macabre is that?
It is, but boy, I mean, it's so. I mean, knitting is very practical. It keeps you warm. It clothes you. It protects you.
Yeah.
But when you're spending this much time doing something, why not add a little something extra to it?
I'm always really impressed when I see old video of people knitting and, you know, old historical video, and you'll see kids, young people knitting, and they're sitting chatting, making socks, and they don't have a pattern. I have to read a pattern like I'm inventing the recipe for dynamite or something. I have to be so careful. I'm so astounded that people can knit something and conceptualize it and translate it onto the needles without having to. I have to stop every 5 seconds and find my place in the pattern and count the stitches and then count on the needle. And if I don't obsessively check it constantly, I can't just look at it and just knit. Yeah. I'm so impressed with that ability. Do you make your own patterns?
I have. Yes. Well, but here's the thing, Helen. I am a great collector. I used to work in a library and I like books. So, because we didn't have the internet then, or the internet, it wasn't as prolific. So you had to buy a book, or
to learn how to do anything, right?
Yeah, to learn how to do anything. Or you went to a yarn shop and you bought patterns. So
right. Oh, I have lots of patterns.
Yeah.
I have binders with patterns that I've downloaded from the internet, and I get those plastic see-through sleeves, you know, that you can put pages in.
Oh yeah, I have oodles of those. So I do Elizabeth Zimmerman. Look her up, everybody, if you haven't heard of her. Elizabeth Zimmerman. She would teach people how to. There was the EPS, Elizabeth percentage system, to where you take a couple of measurements and then you could make a sweater to fit someone in the round by doing math. And it's me, I don't like math, but when I knit one, really fascinating. You might like Elizabeth Zimmerman. She approaches it like a scientist. Very, very understanding, like that.
Mathematically.
Yeah, very mathematical. And so I ended up teaching classes on how to knit the EPS sweater, the Elizabeth percentage system. So that's where I would do that. I would also, I've knit my own cardigans or vests using that same information.
So when you cook, do you use a written recipe?
As a base, yes. Do I stick with it? No.
Oh, see, I have to follow it word for word. I mean, it's obsessive. I'm terrified of wandering off of the written word because I'm afraid that I'll do something wrong. See this beautiful shawl. I get a lot of compliments for this shawl, and there are days when I would like to take the credit for knitting it, but I didn't knit it. This was a gift from Denise, who also made herself one. So we're twins, but this is also variegated yarn. Isn't that beautiful?
It's beautiful, yes.
Yeah, and it's really, it's so nice and warm. It's just a beautiful shawl. So recently I got in touch with her. I said, Denise, can you send me the pattern for that shawl? And she says, with all the arrogance of a true artist, I didn't use a pattern. And so I've tried several times to figure out what she did. I can't figure it out. I give up.
Right.
Yeah. So somebody said something interesting here, that in Peru,
Yes.
knitting is accomplished in the mirror image because they watched it being done and they
Oh,
copied
yes.
from the stand. Isn't that interesting?
That reminds me of someone who she was having some problems with knitting and came into the yarn shop that I worked, and I'm watching her knit, and I'm like, going, that is fascinating. I'm like, and who taught you how to do this? And she said, I learned by whilst watching my grandmother and at her feet. And so, and
It's all backwards.
it was all backwards. The end result was correct.
The same. Yeah. Yeah. Why not?
So I was just like going, I don't think you need to change anything.
So Jill, this is where I lose you. Jill is saying that she cooks, she bakes, from a recipe, but then she takes off and does her own thing. Mm-hmm. That's where I end up poisoning the company. I don't veer off of the path of the, what do you call it, recipe.
Well, I have learned in my lifetime that there are other ways to cook something rather than on high. I always thought that was the only temperature.
Yeah, but it's slower that way. You're stuck in the kitchen longer.
What? That's crazy. So
my philosophy is turn up the heat high, get it over with.
Yeah.
Not a good cook.
So one thing that is also true, and whilst I was there at the yarn shop, we would have medical students come in to want to learn how to knit because it was help with their finger dexterity.
Yep. Yeah, I believe it. And knitting has been shown on imaging to have the same effect on the brain as meditation.
Oh, okay.
That it's considered a very an easily accessible way to get into that state,
I'll take that because I'm not easily into that meditative state.
Oh, Gerald, it's such a struggle. It's funny to use the word struggle and meditate in the same sentence. It requires real effort for me it's like not focus. You don't want to be thinking. You're trying to clear your mind. It's very difficult. Mm-hmm. I have a hard time, and I've been doing this now, not for years and years, but I've been trying for a while now, and like more than a few years and more than a few months and less than a lot of years. Let's put it that way.
So if people, so I am using up bits of yarn. I'm using size 10.5 needle, using a Lamb's Pride bulky weight yarn.
Mm-hmm.
I'm name dropping.
Is that a good yarn?
It is a good yarn. It's a wool, and it is a where'd it go? It's a wool and mohair. It's a great felting yarn.
So don't wash what you knit.
Do not wash what you knit. But I am actually, so I'm using up bits of yarn for this next ribbon, and what I have here are this hat. So I just switched, and then I switched, and then what I will do is I will go in when I'm finished and weave in the ends.
Yeah. Do you do it with a needle?
I do.
Yeah, so do I. I think there are a lot of ways to do things that are official that I didn't necessarily learn, and I just sort of half-ass it, and it usually accomplishes the job, but I'm always curious, what should I be doing? Sherry, you're so funny. Cooking 2 temperatures, high and off. My favorite form of cooking is 30 seconds. Be sure you cover the dish.
That being said, I have gotten so much better with both my cooking and my knitting by really, I've learned how to look at my knitting and to recognize if there's a problem So because I would also teach beginners knitting classes. And one of the things that I wanted people to realize is first of all, the first thing that you're going to knit is going to be horrible. It's supposed to be.
Well, if you're learning.
Yeah. Don't upset yourself. Don't get
Be
upset.
hard on yourself.
It's not perfect.
And I think the best advice, and you're the teacher, so you should be giving the advice, but it's my feeling that your expectations should be pretty narrow or broad. I don't know which would apply. Knit a scarf. Just a long rectangle. Doesn't have to fit anybody. There's no shaping. Just nice long until you feel comfortable making the stitches, right?
Yeah.
And then the next thing I think would be like with the hat, like you're wearing right now, except without the fancy cable knit because you're showing off. But
but so yeah, so and that was the thing, because then I would, after a couple of inches of just knit, which stockinette, then I would show people the purl stitch. And then that's what you get when you have knitting that is flat on one side and ruffly on the other.
Yeah.
So like up here is stockinette. It's all knit. And I mean, this, am I saying that right? No, this garter stitch is knit every row. So you have ridges.
But it's in the round, so it looks like you purled in the back.
Yeah, and so this is the purl side, and it's
that's what a regular sweater usually looks like.
Yeah,
and
but so it's really interesting because so as part of the class we would take some time. It's like to look at the knitting and figure out what is different about these, and if something is wrong with it, because you want the left side of the yarn to be in front of the needle, and you want the right side to be on the right in the front of the needle, and the left side to be behind it, so that you're not twisting stitches. And boy, some people would be they would be twisting their stitches. I'm going to, okay, look at it and tell me what's wrong. But then I would fix it. I'd show them how to fix it. And they're like, oh, good. And they would want to take it back. But then I would put the mistake back, so they would have to fix it. Because well, evil, yes, but
we're going to call you Gerald Assad.
Yes, there you go. Well, but here's the thing. When it's 11 o'clock at night and you're trying to knit, and you can't fix something, that's a problem. You want to be able to fix it. You want to be able to see it. So
I told you I was making that shawl, and theoretically it's a simple shawl pattern, but it's got, it has that spine down the back in a straight line that looks really pretty when you're finished. So there's a center stitch, and on one side all the stitches go one way, just the next stitch over goes one way all the way up, and on the other side all the stitches go the other way, and then there are some yarn overs, and there so it's you really should be paying attention. And yesterday I was watching this new Netflix movie about drug reps selling fentanyl. It's a docudrama, it's based on true fact, and it's not bad. It was pretty good. And I kept getting distracted, and I could not find where I made the mistake. And I had to unknit because it's so fussy that I didn't want to lose a stitch somewhere. So I had to unknit it, and I must have unknitted it 20 times. And I kept having problems getting the right number of stitches on. It looked fine, but it was the wrong number of stitches. What a nightmare. I think I got it right now. When I finally got it back to where 12 rows farther back than where I was, I finally figured it out. I don't know what I did wrong, but I'm going to have to count every single row just to be sure.
Well, yeah. I understand that. So, okay. Sleuth Jill said, OMG, that reminds me when my son went to college and I said I would educate him on good washing practices. Response: no need to. The hand knitted sweater became a doll sweater. Yeah.
You just want to
And
strangle him.
yeah. Marjorie McConnell said, my mother tried to teach me to knit. I just could not get it. However, I taught myself to cross stitch.
My mother was a nurse, and in the olden days, there was a lot more staying in the hospital for a long period of recuperation. So people were not acutely sick. Nowadays, nurses rarely sit down in a shift because everybody's hooked up to computerize this and computerize that. And the actual technology has to be tweaked and monitored, and it's really astounding with what they have. But in the old days, it was more a matter of, do you need a bedpan? Can I help you roll over? That was about it.
Yeah.
So that they would have to occupy themselves for hours if they worked the night shift. And she knew how to embroider, and she embroidered some beautiful tablecloths. I mean, really, it looked like painting, you know. And she also taught me how to do embroidery, Marjorie, when I was about 6. I did a bib for my brother that she was expecting. At least I think it was that brother. Maybe I was a little young. She was always pregnant, you know.
Yeah.
But embroidery seems to be a niche creative activity that is not as popular as it once was.
Well, I think there is a niche market of embroidery for for a certain group of people who what they embroider, the words they embroider are rather funny that may not be appropriate for public
So like they sell them on Etsy, and they do cross stitches that are risque. Yeah, I love that. I think there are people who really, and I used to do this actually. I used to enjoy it. That would do samplers, but they're kits, and you'd get a cross stitch kit, and it would be really elaborate. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't do that anymore.
I would be curious to learn about tatting.
Oh, it looks a little too fussy. I've seen people do it. I don't know where I was. It was like on a boat or something, and there was somebody tatting to pass the time. But they had like a pillow, and all these pins with threads, and they were stuck in the pillow to hold them upright, the pins.
Yeah.
And then all the threads were what they were tatting. I thought, oh my God, I would have a Gordian knot of misery by the time I was done. It just looked, it looked complicated, you know.
Tim said, I learned how to do knitting by making myself a Doctor Who scarf.
Yep.
I actually received, before I was a knitter, I actually had a staff member who was a knitter, and she knit me a Doctor Who scarf.
I don't know what a Doctor Who scarf is.
Tom Baker, who was he the 5th Doctor? Do you know Doctor Who?
I know it's a show. I've never seen it.
Okay, it's a show. It's a science fiction show, and the Doctor goes through regeneration, so we get a new actor every time that happens. So and every actor has, or every version has, their own costumes. And so Tom Baker wore a scarf. Tom Baker's like 6.5 foot tall, and it wrapped around it hung down to his feet and wrapped around his neck like 3 times. And then went down. So this person who knit it, you can find how to knit Doctor Who scarves. They actually will give you the names of the colors in the yarn if you are that detailed.
It was a particular stripe pattern.
It basically, this is what I recall, is that the woman who got commissioned to do this for the BBC had like less than a week to knit it. And she just used all of her scraps of wool. And so it was like, oh my gosh, it's very fun.
So how long was the one that they made for you?
It was probably a good 12 and a half feet.
Oh my God. Do you
So
find that you get bored on the same project? Like I start with enthusiasm and then about partway through, I'm like, oh God, I can hardly wait for this to be over.
yes,
You do? Oh, it's normal.
which is why I my philosophy is that I would have like three types of projects going. One that was completely mindless, that I
Like
could
this.
sit and watch TV. Yes.
Yeah.
One that was good to travel with, like a pair of socks that wasn't too complicated.
I think socks are the worst.
Well, I don't.
So hard. I've made one pair successfully, and I'm afraid to wear them because so much blood and probably 3 or 4 years of my life went into making them that I don't want to wear them out.
Well, and one of the things that I did is while I would travel, I would actually take a project with me, and they would be socks, so that while I was wearing those socks, I was remembering where I was when I was knitting them.
Oh, that's so
And
romantic or something.
yes,
Sentimental. Yeah.
yes, and because my thing is how do you get the socks to match in length? I mean, so part of what I did, and this is just Gerald, I would actually I would divide the skein into two equal amounts, and I would have two sets of needles. So if I did something on one, I would do it on the next thing.
You'd
So
alternate
I would alternate between them.
Oh my God, that's too
Yeah.
logical.
So, and
That's smart.
yeah. Sleuth Jill said, needlework embroidery is the one craft I cannot my brain to enjoy. I get it. And Tim Blackveil is listing all of the colors of the Doctor Who scarf.
Oh.
And Marjorie said tatting sounds like lace making.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's what it is. Yeah.
Linda Bishop said, 50 years ago, I worked in a state mental hospital in Tennessee. Carried knitting and crossword puzzles to work every night because sometimes we were sent to regular hospital to sit with patient. Yeah.
Yeah. There's not a whole lot of that anymore. God, now you can have a major abdominal procedure. They'll do it laparoscopically. I mean, they don't open you all the way up. They stick that camera in you, and they want you to go home in 2 hours. My husband, wait till you hear this. My husband had a heart attack, and they put a stent in his heart on a Saturday and told him he could go back to work on Monday. I said, "Are you kidding me? I don't think so. You can take a whole week off. Are you joking?" When you would go into the hospital for a heart procedure, and not, like not a heart transplant, just 6 weeks. People would be in there 6 weeks.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
6S's was going to watch later, but had to chime in when I saw the hats. Love the color of Gerald's hat especially.
It glows. It's absolutely beautiful.
Thank you.
Now, did you make your shirt too?
No, this is just a regular, no.
But it matches.
It does match, and I did not plan that. It's coincidence. Coinky dink.
Well, there's no such thing, Gerald.
Well, this is a topic I'm going to have for a show on my channel sometime, talking about the importance of synchronicity. And
can I play?
If you want. So.
I think synchronicity, when you start to pay attention to it, I don't want to say it's like when you're pregnant, everybody else is pregnant. You see a million pregnant people. I really don't want to dismiss it, but it's very strange to me that I will be, well, this is an example. I'll go for a walk, and in the olden days when I did politics, and I want a good topic, right? And I really wouldn't have anything in mind. And I put a podcast on, and lo and behold, it would just pop up a good topic. I'd come home and pick up the paper, and there it would be again. and then I'd hear it somewhere and I'd think, well, this is, you know, a sign. It feels synchronistic. That is that the right
Yes.
word? Yeah.
I honestly think synchronicity, and you know, what other words that you want to, you know, get your
Coincidence.
you know, coincidence, coinkydink, synchronicities. I think it's really very important, and the more often we pay attention to those, I think the more we can find solutions to things uh, that are escaping our brain and our processing. Because I would imagine that, well, and again, this is Gerald's opinion. I honestly think some of the, like the Renaissance masters, they were called masters because they were able to look and to notice things and to notice when synchronicities showed up or similarities, and how that is so important. So
Here's a little thing that I guess I heard a long time ago and I kind of forgot about it. My husband was reminding me about this recently. You know how around the time of the Renaissance, paintings started to become more, they looked more real, like early medieval art looked like children drew. Yeah. Well, one of the ways they did that is they used what they called a camera obscura. Are you familiar with that?
I am. Will you tell everybody about that? Because it's a great concept.
Well, I'm not sure that I understand physics enough to explain it well, but it involves camera in Latin means room. It's a little room. So it's this little box with strategically located holes. Don't ask me to explain the light theory behind it, but essentially it uses light and a little box to focus on a part of something real in the real room. And you can magnify what you're looking at using this thing. Don't ask me to explain. And you basically kind of tracing it.
Mm-hmm.
Did I explain that right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, and I think one of the things I remember in college, I had a professor for painting, and we had to do, it was a 12 by 12 canvas. We had to get fruit. We had to divide that 12 by 12 canvas into 1/2 inch squares. So we had to put a grid on it. And then we had to have a black board, and we had to cut a 1-inch square out of the center of it, so that what we did is we looked through the square at that portion of the still life, and that's what we would paint. So that would help us identify exactly the color that square was, because when people see an apple with a light shining on it, they think, okay, I've got a really light color for the shine, I've got the red, and then I've got black. It's not that. It's actually a way to separate so that you can identify the colors that are in the shadows and areas, and it really a great exercise. I still have that painting. I love it.
Do you remember, I don't know what to call this, but do you remember in the olden days when magazines were a thing, there'd be a thing in the back of a magazine from an art school where you'd get to copy a picture onto a grid like graph paper.
Mm-hmm.
And if you just replicated what was in each little square of the graph paper, you would end up copying the drawing, right? Theoretically.
Yes.
Yeah. I loved that when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Did you ever order anything from the back of a magazine like that?
I did not. I didn't have any money to send any to anybody. So.
Well, it's something that would cost 25 cents, and it would take you 2 months to
yeah,
save
exactly.
25 cents. I once ordered actually, this was free. It was from a cornflakes box. And if you sent in enough box tops, you got a free harmonica shaped like a plastic corn cob. Do you remember those?
I don't remember those, but I do remember, being able to send away cereal box tops and stuff like that.
Yeah. They had the spy glasses where you could see through things, and and it was always a woman in a dress and you saw her underwear.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And a glass where you filled up the water and a new picture appeared or a picture disappeared, whatever.
Oh yeah.
I used to love stuff like that. We had friends of our family who were older. They were probably in their late 50s, early 60s. They seemed like Methuselah to me when I was about 5 or 6. And we would go to visit them, and they didn't have children anymore, and they had this beautiful house, and it was all very adult and entirely unlike where I was living. And they had a basket full of catalogs, and I spent hours poring over those catalogs. The bird that bobbed into a glass of water, if you put it.
Oh yeah, I remember those.
And the man, his name was Mitchell. Mitchell liked stuff like that. So once he bought and it came out of the catalog, it was a rubber hand, just like this, had nail polish on it, and you hung it in a drawer, so there was a hand hanging out of your drawer. You had a body in the drawer.
I love it.
Oh my God, he was great.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, Linda Fraser said, "Hi all, thank you, Helen and Gerald, for this video. Gerald, I have similar memories of my art
classes. That's great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for joining us. We didn't think anybody would. At least I didn't think anybody would be here. So this is thrilling.
Well, I think a lot of people in our community do. They're willing to do things with their hand. They're crafters, or they will. I think do people still make do and mend out there instead of just throwing something out and buying a new thing?
I do. I know how to darn socks. I learned how to darn socks when I was 5.
You know how to darn them, but you don't know how to make them?
Isn't that ironic? Well, I did successfully make one pair, but it was absolutely exhausting mentally and physically.
You're knitting with double points, correct?
Only for this, because I don't have an appropriate sized round needle right now.
Yeah. Well, so I like knitting with double points, especially like when I'm traveling and I'm walking around, I'm knitting with double points.
You don't like, or you do?
I do. I love it because it makes me look dangerous. It's like, ooh, look at that guy. He's got, what can he do? And I'm like going, yeah, don't come. I mean, I love it. I love it. And so it's
oh yeah, until you go through TSA and they take you in the back to frisk you because you got a weapon.
Oh my gosh, let me tell you about that. One of the things that I right after we had that incident in September, after 9/11, I was traveling after that. And I was knitting, and I was like going, oh my God, they're not going to let me take knitting needles on. So what I did was I took chopsticks, and I put rubber bands on the ends of the chopsticks, and I knit with chopsticks on the plane. They let that happen.
Because they weren't pointed?
Yes, they weren't pointed. And you
could stab somebody in the eye with a chopstick. I have the mind of
a serial
international criminal.
That's that. But I was really worried about that, because I'm like, how am I going to be able to do this and travel, because I was always knitting. So
yeah, well, you have to bring stuff like that at an airport because you don't know how long you're going to be stuck.
Yes. And of course, I was really worried because I was going to be traveling with my insulin and all that stuff. And I thought, oh my gosh, they're going to give me a hard time about that. And I actually said something to one of the TSA agents, And the woman very kindly said, "You're not the first diabetic to travel. It's okay." And I went, okay.
Here, you thought you were a trendsetter.
Well, I was worried because it's
Yeah.
the first time. So, okay.
Well, you don't know. You hear all kinds of horror stories.
Yeah.
I once had a horrible experience with a TSA agent, and you really understand the power disparity. So, and this was a while ago. I was not in bad shape, you know. I go through the thing, and it set off the buzzers, and so she had to pat me down. And she patted me down, and she says to me, "Oh, somebody needs to lose some weight."
Oh, bitch, please. Excuse me.
I think my blood pressure probably redlined, and if I'd had a weak spot, if I'd had an aneurysm, I'd be dead right now. I knew not to say anything because I knew if I opened my mouth and said something, I was going to be in handcuffs.
Right.
Oh my God. Can you imagine being that person and speaking to people like that?
No. I mean, people are idiots.
Well, obviously somebody who feels powerless in her own life.
That's true.
Right?
That's true.
So, Tim, you're talking about women using knitting needles.
Oh, that's yeah. That was to quote, you know, there's a quote from Patsy Stone from Absolutely Fabulous, the TV show. One of the characters was, yes, references Bring Me a Knitting Needle related to the Star's Child. She does not like the Star's Child.
So I have a little collection from a little old lady I took care of, a collection of hat pins. In the olden days when women wore their hair in a bun and they wore fancy hats, they would they're basically skewers. They would skewer the hat right through the hair and out the other side of the hat to keep the hat from blowing away in the wind. And they were works of art. They're absolutely beautiful. They're in the other room. I'll try to remember to bring them back, you know, bring them in here next time. But they're as sharp as you know what. Yeah. And there are stories of women defending themselves with hat pins.
Yep.
I believe it.
Yep. Yeah.
Oh, 6 is saying the same thing.
Yeah.
You still believe in sea monkeys? Me too. I got to relive it when my kids were little. I got to live vicariously things that I couldn't do when I was a child because, you know, we were poor too. You know what I'm talking about, Gerald.
Yeah.
When my kids were children, we could indulge in sea monkeys.
Right. So that's an interesting question. Is what's something that you wanted as a kid that you got yourself as an adult?
Well, I can't think of anything. As a kid, I really wanted a bicycle, and my parents couldn't afford it.
Right.
And I finally got a bicycle when I was about 11. And that's when I learned how to ride a bike. And it was hilarious because Christmas Day, I got it for Christmas. We had to come in and stop riding because it was too hot outside.
Oh, sheesh. Oh, my gosh.
I can't think of anything.
Marjorie McConnell said, my ears pierced.
Oh, okay. Well, I was finally allowed to do that when I was 16. So, yeah.
I wanted a spirograph.
Oh, they're so cool.
And I also wanted an Etch-a-Sketch.
Yeah.
And I did buy myself an Etch-a-Sketch as an adult.
Oh, did you really?
Because I mean, it just makes me ridiculously happy. So,
you know, this is going to sound weird. We never had a car that wasn't a piece of garbage. It was
Mhm.
always not just secondhand or 30, like 25 years old and always falling apart. And when I think about it now, we would sit on each other's laps to cram everybody into a car. There were no seatbelts. That wasn't a
Mhm.
thing, right?
Right.
And it was always embarrassing because they looked like rattle traps. We looked like the Beverly Hillbillies, and they always broke down and were completely unreliable. You never knew when you got into the car whether it was actually going to start, whether you were actually going to get to your destination and back. It was just an ongoing misery. And we never, ever, ever owned even a decent secondhand car, let alone a new car. So this is ironic. Right before COVID,
Uh-oh, she froze. She froze.
off a car. It
Okay.
wasn't
Hang on,
new.
hang on, hang on. You froze there for a second.
You
I
flat.
what I heard was right before COVID, and then you froze.
I saved up enough money and I bought myself a car. And it wasn't new. It was a couple of years old, but it was really low mileage. And it's still really low mileage because since COVID, I have not driven my car. I have nowhere to go.
Right.
How ironic is that? I used to just sit in that car and revel in the fact that all the knobs were intact and the
Oh
upholstery
yeah.
was pristine and everything worked. You could turn anything on and it worked. And it's
Mhm.
not high tech. I don't like cars
Right.
that feel like the space shuttle.
Right.
But it's all clean and beautiful. I still go out and clean it.
I love that. I love
that
that.
yeah, that's the only thing I can think of. So it wasn't exactly a toy, but I was very embarrassed as a child
Hmm.
by driving around in the Beverly Hillbillies
Yeah.
truck. The
Aw.
Clampets, right?
So yeah, I'm at a point where I am almost out of yarn, and I've got to decide if I play chicken and bind off.
Will it fit? Are you already finished with that?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's size 10 and a half needle.
Well, I am like I am with many things. I have to devote my attention. I can't be doing two things at the same time. I can't read a book with music playing in the background.
Oh, I can't either. That drives me nuts.
I used to yell at my oldest daughter because she never sat down to study. She jumped around, and had to play music. And I used to say, "You're not paying attention. You need to devote your attention to what you're doing." Well, she's a dancer and she's a kinesthetic learner, but I didn't know about that in the old days. Now I know.
Right.
She had to do that in order to retain anything.
Sure. That's good though.
You got your ears pierced when you inherited. Oh, I'm so jealous. The piercing hole had stretched. She was 96. Well, everything stretches when you're 96, Jill. I hate to tell you. And
Yeah.
it doesn't wait until you're 96 to get there either.
No. Do you drive a stick shift?
I can. My car right now is an automatic, but I can. Yeah.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
like my car right now is an automatic, and I've had lots of standards
It's
manual.
not hard.
It's not, you just have to understand. For me, it's like I had to understand what was going on
You
in
could
the
tell by the
engine.
sound of the engine.
Well, yes, but I had to understand what was going on in the engine so that I could understand what the sound
Oh,
was.
you mean mechanically?
Yeah.
Oh, if you told me that, I wouldn't be able to do it at all. I just
Yeah.
intuitively okay, it's time to shift. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that makes perfect sense. So, do you ever have to unknit?
Oh, last night. All
Yes.
the time. Yeah.
So, do you know that the term for that is tink? Do you know that? The term for that is tink.
No.
Yes. Do you know why? Does anybody in the chat know why? Why is that called tinking?
You weren't tinking? I don't know what. Why?
Because it's knit.
Oh, it's backwards. Just dawned on me. Oh my God. Oh, that's so. Is that really true? Or did you just make that up?
It's true. No, it's true. Yeah.
I love that.
Yes.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
That is hilarious.
Yep. It's knit backwards.
I actually tink more than I knit. I'm serious. Pretty
well, yeah. And
30%.
I had something to where I was going to go. I had to think, do I care enough about this to tink back for 2 rows?
Oh, that's minimal.
Well, yeah.
But of course, it depends on what you're doing. If you can see what the mistake is. My mistake was counting the stitches. That the count was off, but you couldn't see what looked different. You know, it was too weird.
Mm-hmm.
Change of stick shift gears when the clutch cable had severed. Oh my God.
Oh my gosh.
Yep. My first car I bought from people I babysat for. They sold it to me. I'm glad you're sitting down. It was a pity sale. $50. It was a Chevy Malibu station wagon from about 1963, I think. And when I think about this now, Gerald, oh my God, I'm mortified. I used to drive home drive back to college from my parents' house. It's about a 2.5, 3-hour drive along the Pacific Coast Highway. I used to drive 90 miles an hour because when you're 19, you're going to live forever. You don't even crank up the radio, open the windows, and speed past the Pacific. Oh, my God.
My first car was an AMC Pacer.
No.
If you want to Google what a Pacer looks like, it's a fishbowl on a roller skate.
It's like this distant cousin of a gremlin, right?
Yes, and I am pretty sure that that was my parents' effort to prevent me from trying to make out in a car because it was all windows.
And trying to speed over 25 miles an hour.
Yes, exactly. Oh my gosh. Yeah, it was hilarious.
Oh, that is so funny. I'm actually afraid now to get in my car because it's been so long since I've driven. I'm not sure I remember how to turn it on.
Oh gosh.
It'll come back. It's muscle memory.
Yes, yes.
Much like knitting. Datsuns. I love Datsuns.
Somebody said, Datsun. Oh yeah. Cool.
Drive it home. You'll learn.
Rambler, yes.
That's like, did he throw you in the deep end of the pool so you could learn to swim?
No.
God, oh my God.
That's ridiculous.
That's sadistic. I know. It's terrible. That was a thing, though, you know. People did that.
Well, yes, people did that. We'll just leave it at that. People
not your kind of people.
No, I mean, no, actually my siblings probably would have done that to me.
Oh yeah.
So
yeah.
But, you know, there you go.
Did you used to do holding your breath contests underwater in the pool?
Yes.
Is it a miracle we survived into adulthood?
Well, sometimes I think about that. Oh, and speaking of which, did you ever play Marco Polo?
Yeah.
In the pool? Yes.
Yeah.
I read somewhere somebody was at a store and they heard a man go Marco, and on the other side of the store they heard Polo. It was his wife responding, so they knew where each other was. And it's like, I have new relationship goals, and I'm like, that's hilarious.
It is so cute. It's clever. I grew up in Southern California, and it wasn't as much, I don't think it was as much a thing in those days to actually pay to have your children learn to swim. But in my family, it wasn't a priority. I guess they figured there's plenty more kids where that one came from, so we won't worry about it. So we learned to swim by doing.
Yes.
And we would go to the ocean because what better place to learn how to swim than in the the
And
waves, the
in the
surf.
undertow with all of the sharks
And we would body surf. And
Mhm.
nobody taught us how to do any of that. We would just go out there and then hope we returned alive. Isn't that
Wow.
kind of remarkable now when you think about it?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
My kids would just be horrified, you know. They would never do that with their precious children. Oh, Ford Pinto. Oh, I'm glad you didn't get hit from the back, did you? Remember that?
Gosh. Oh yeah, I do remember that.
Wow, it was terrible. Oh,
Yeah.
chlorinated pools are awful, but you know, you have
Hey.
to.
Well, yeah. Yeah, I actually had a neighbor who had a swimming pool, and we spent a lot of time together as kids. We did go to different schools, but he was right next door, and
Perfect.
yeah, so it's like okay.
My husband grew up also in Southern California, but more south than we were. I was in Santa Barbara, which is actually technically central. He was in LA. He was in Whittier, which is Nixon country.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh, I know. And he lived in a kind of a fancy neighborhood, and everybody had pools. And he got in trouble as a child. This is like a pivotal trauma of his childhood. He got in huge trouble as a child, throwing dirt clods in the neighbor's pool.
Yeah, that's not good. That's not good. So,
We used to have fruit fights. Ever have a fruit fight?
what is a fruit fight?
Well, at a certain time of the year in California, kind of late summer, everything is ripe. And at least when I was a child, there were endless fruit trees of all sorts. I can't even tell you how many different fruit trees we had in our yard. And we weren't, you know, anything special. It was real common. And avocados. We used to have avocado fights. The Irish
Oh my
at the
gosh.
time, they didn't know from avocados, right? So nobody in my family knew what you did with an avocado. So we would big Haas avocados, when I think about it now, probably worth about $6 or $7 a piece now. We used to jump on them when they were ripe and squirt each other with them. But you know, we had apricots and nectarines and
Sure. Oh yeah.
plums. So a fruit fight is when you gather up all the ripe fruit and you team up and pelted each at the other team with ripe fruit. My mother used to get so mad.
That was messy, I'm sure.
That's why she got mad. It was terrible.
Yes.
Oh, we did it in an empty field, but we'd come home head to toe, you know, squished peaches or squished
Oh yeah.
apricots or whatever. Yeah. A
Oh,
little bit like the Garden of Eden. A sea lion attacked you? Did I read that right?
what?
My first time in the surf, a huge California sea lion attacked you?
Oh
Oh
my
my
gosh.
God. Those things, I mean, theoretically, they could kill you. They're really mean. You know, there's a difference between sea lions and seals. Seals are kind of cute, you know, and sea lions are like these gigantic, they're kind of like walruses, you know.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
And they're aggressive. The males are they're called bulls, bull sea lion, and they actually have like whiskers, and
Yeah.
they're very aggressive, and they smell. Oh my God, so bad. When I was a little girl, I remember very well a neighbor taking me out on a boat, a speedboat in the ocean. And we went around the harbor and we went around the buoys, and there were ecosystems of harbor seals living, you know, in the harbor, right? They're all gone now. Isn't that sad?
It is sad. It's very sad.
You'd stand on the pier and look down at the pilings in the water, and then suddenly this little head would pop up and look at you, you know.
Ta-da!
Yeah.
Surprise.
Yeah. That and the tar after the oil spills. You couldn't really wear a decent bathing suit in the water because it would be destroyed. And we'd all go home and we'd have to have the oil, the tar, like thick tar, taken off our feet. My dad would use gasoline.
Oh gosh.
Well, you know.
Yeah.
You let your kid body surf and the kid doesn't know how to swim. Why wouldn't you use gasoline on it?
Yeah.
Well, I think we've put in well over an hour. I think that's just remarkable.
Yes, and I'm almost done. I'm just putting in my ends.
Oh, I've made no progress. I've been exercising my mouth. You grew up in Concord. Concord. Now, isn't that close to where the Golden State Killer plied his trade? Joseph D'Angelo.
All of the interesting facts that you have, Helen. This is just so fascinating. Everybody needs to subscribe to your channel and keep coming back.
Oh, thank you. It's undergone a little remodeling lately, but I'm doing a little more true crime.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up where he killed people. And he killed about 10 people a mile from my parents' house. Not at the same time. He killed couples. And he had a knack for breaking into houses. It was uncanny. Later, they knew more about it. But at the time, they didn't know how he was choosing his victims. And at the time, my husband and I were, first living together in sin, as my mother would say. And it was August. And I just remember roasting to death because we were afraid to have our windows open at night.
Oh, uh-huh.
Because this guy was stalking, the town. Turned out he started out in Visalia area. And is that near Concord or is that a little more south, Concord? But the Bay Area and then Visalia and Concord. And he was a cop in one of those small towns.
Oh, geez.
And lunatic. He started out as a younger man. He was the Visalia ransacker. He would wait until Friday night when the high school had its football game, and he would break into houses and ransack the house. And you know what people like that do, don't you?
No, what do they do?
Well, do you know the full story of what they did in the Capitol building on January 6th?
Well, I know part of it, but go ahead.
Well, they use the hallways for things that are better done in a room with shut doors and
privacy. Yes.
So this is what a lot of times when some young person becomes a home breaker, like a burglar type thing, and they're in there for vandalism. They do that, and it's a psychological thing. It's got to do with asserting dominance.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's like a dog peeing on its territory.
Right.
Only it's not number one.
Right.
Okay. So he did that for a long time. And then he started breaking in and attacking women who were alone. And I, take that to the full extent of the meaning because I don't want to say the word on.
Yes.
And then somebody from the police department said, oh, well, he's not breaking into houses where there are couples. So single women need to be careful. So he started breaking into houses where there were couples. And it just escalated and escalated and escalated until finally he was murdering people. And he murdered a doctor I worked with and his girlfriend. Oh, yeah, it was real. It was very scary. But they found him by genetic genealogy where they get some DNA and they work backwards. They don't know who the DNA belongs to, so they try to find related DNA back a few generations, and they trace it forward, and that's how they found him. It was the first case that I'm aware of, anyway, that used genetic DNA to genetic genealogy is what it's called. Yeah.
Genetic genealogy.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
You know, they'll narrow it down. Okay, it looks like this was his father and this was his mother, and they had 6 children, but that one's too young and that one's too old, and those children are girls, so they don't, you know, they're not in the picture, and that they narrow it down. Or they'll find a family with male cousins and they'll be able to narrow it down from that.
Wow. So should we do this again sometime?
I had fun.
Okay. I did too.
Well, I'm hoping other people, you know,
Yes.
enjoyed it too.
I hope people leave a comment to let us know whether or not we should do this again.
Or what you'd like us to talk about.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Because Gerald and I can talk about anything, right, Gerald?
We have talked about anything. Yes, you are correct. And I think we have a pretty dang good time.
It was really, really fun. I didn't get a whole lot of knitting done. I got some done, but too distracted.
So, well, I have an end and a half to put in, and then I'm done. So there you go.
Oh God, just a cut above. Did you see what I advertised when I told everybody to come watch this? I mean, you may not have had the chance because I did it on this right here. You'll see it when the recording presents itself. I said, you know, join us and we'll keep you in stitches. I can't help it. I love it. It's just natural.
It's natural.
Oh, thank you,
yes.
Linda. Well, the goal here, okay, just so everybody gets a sense of what's going on. The goal here is these are hard times. And I think we've all been really low. I know I have. Very low. And people have said, oh, you know, I can't think about any more of this. And I began to realize that it's not making much of a difference to tell people what's going on, because, you know, people are blah, 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 they don't want to hear. So long story short, I thought, okay, well, let's try something slightly different. Let's try for escape and distraction and entertainment. Mm-hmm. Humor is healing. It's cathartic.
Humor is very healing, and we need to not lose our sense of humor.
I agree.
You know, because it shifts the energy, and you know, your daughter is a kinesthetic learner, so she learned better by moving. Mm-hmm. I think we all learn better when we remember to take a breath and laugh, because we're all funny. We're all weird. It's okay.
Liza, I see your question. She was asking, maybe we could talk about this particular time in history and what our job is on the planet. We can get into it more, but I think how we decide to react to what we're being presented with is our job. Mm-hmm. How we decide to treat other people,
yes,
is our job. Yeah.
Yes.
So, see this? Be nicer.
Yes. So I finished.
Oh, okay. So it's beautiful, and I thought you were making a hat. It's a headband.
It's a headband. I was just like I'm going to do that. So. I'm not finished with a hat.
Oakley neighboring.
Oakley neighbor. So I need to be. So what you're telling me is I need to wear a green sweater and make my mustache brown.
No, it's just, you know, it's a vague similarity, but it's so funny.
It's funny.
Ned Flanders is one of the most inspired characters ever in animation, I believe. Yes. This is just my personal opinion, but I have issues with his particular worldview, so I enjoy, you know.
Yes.
Funny, very, very funny. Did you ever see the episode where I can't remember why, but Homer did something stupid and they lost custody of the children and they had to go into foster care, and guess who the foster parents were?
Wow.
So they pull out of their own driveway with the social worker, and she immediately drives into the Flanderses' driveway.
That's
and
hilarious.
Oh my God, they're playing board games in the living room with Rod and Todd, you know, like let's play the Books of the Bible board game. And then Maud comes in with a tray of treats and she says, "Who wants some wintergreen ice cream?" No,
Wow.
wintergreen ice milk. Even better.
Oh shoot! And I actually had some Haagen-Dazs chocolate ice cream, coffee chocolate ice cream that I was going to
You showed me the
taunt
picture.
you with. No, I was going to taunt you with it here on the live.
You would have seen a grown woman cry.
Well, that's okay. So I didn't want to see a grown woman cry.
I'm
I
so
didn't do it.
jealous. At least you're enjoying it.
Yes.
I'm very jealous. Anyway, thank you everybody for watching. We could just natter on all day here, or knitter on all day, as it were. Sorry.
That's a good one, knitter. Oh, that's good.
I can't help it.
No, don't stop. That's perfect.
Blowing out of me. Thank you everybody so much for watching, and we'll come back. We're trying to schedule this on a regular basis. We need to talk about it, and I don't know if this is a good time of day or people working. I don't know,
Yeah,
we'll have to think about it. But thank you so much, Gerald. Maybe we could have you do tutorials.
Oh my gosh.
No, okay, no, okay.
Well, I don't have that set up. I can cheer you on. We'll say that.
Yeah, I may have questions for you because I've got a big, gigantic basket of sock yarn that I really do need to use. So I've just been pretending it's not there. Okay, thank you everybody very, very, very much for watching. Slongafoil, slancha.